I'm done with you in this pity party. Come with me. Like, you need to get out more. Come with me to this reception at my parents' house. You'll meet some people, but you need to move on. Like, this is ridiculous. And so I went with her to the party begrudgingly because she's pretty, persuasive. And it was at that party that I can say that was the pivot moment that changed my life in a way that I probably wouldn't be talking to you today on this podcast.
In a corporate world where all employees have great leaders with no egos that create fun cultures where people can do their best work, the employees and companies thrive while doing great things for the customers, themselves, and each other.
Well, we know that rarely happens. I'm Jeff Palacio. I have been a leader for over 40 years for every t-shirt size company, from small 16 employees to extra large over 1 million. Please join me while I interview outstanding leaders that will share stories of great leadership and not so great. It will help you become a better leader while poking fun about all the crazy shit that happens in corporate America.
Hi, I'm Joe Deshawn, and welcome to the Corporate Couch with Jeff Palacio. Today's episode is brought to you by Palacio and Partners, providing turnkey podcast creation, hosting, production, promotion, and related creative resources for you and your business. Today, Jeff is interviewing Shannon Nash. Shannon is the podcaster behind No Boxes, Just Verses podcast. She has been a chief financial officer, a chief accounting officer, a chief operating officer, an executive director, and a public company's board director. She is an award-winning film producer and has been named one of Silicon Valley's 100 most influential women. She has a Bachelor of Science in Accounting degree as well as a law degree from the University of Virginia. Let's listen as Jeff talks to Shannon.
Shannon, welcome to the Corporate Couch this morning.
It's good to be on the couch.
Fellow podcasters, you launched yours in August of 11th, I believe, of this year, 2025. Here we're recording on September 23rd. So yeah, congratulations. Your phenomenal background. You're like a Renaissance woman, all the stuff you've been involved in. And I love that an accounting major has a creative side. You were executive producer of an award-winning film. We'll talk about that documentary. So, for you future accounting majors, you don't have to be boring. So there you go.
Oh, no. Oh, absolutely not.
We were talking offline, and we were talking about Shannon being also a certified Zumba instructor. So we may do some little dance moves during the podcast.
Are you loosening up? Was that a loosen up?
Yeah, I need to loosen up.
Okay.
Yeah, so talk about, you're pretty active out there on social and you have your own podcast, but what's one thing that would surprise people about you, even though they know you fairly well?
Two things I thought about because I've listened to your format. I knew you were going to ask me that question. I think that some people know this, but probably your listeners don't. Some people know that I literally, for a certain, genre and era of songs, I could go and beat Shazam. I absolutely could go on that show. Like, you don't have to play very much of a song, and I'm like, that's Duran Duran, The Reflex. Like,
wow.
I have a recall for music and then lyrics. Yeah. And so, I've been in team meetings or what do you call them? Team retreats, where somebody will be like, hey, let's play this song. And I'm like, I know every word. And people are like, what?
Funny.
Like, how do you know? And I'm like, I just have a recall for music like that. And then the older I've gotten, I'll say the other thing that some people find surprising, I'm very extroverted, yet I'm not. Yeah. I'm actually super introverted and prefer to be alone. If I had like my wish, I'd be like, I just want to be alone for like the next 10 days. And that's like change. Like, it's changed that honestly, I'll say to you, Jeff, being over 50, it's just kind of changed.
Interesting. Well, I haven't gotten there yet, but I'm getting close to 50. No, I'm kidding. I never asked a guest this question, but since it's music related, what was your first concert?
Bless my parents' hearts. I think that they were young parents. And this is something certainly that they would have gotten probably viral on social media with all kinds of negative comments by having a very young kid at a Rick James concert where it was nothing but I don't know what these people were smoking, but let's just say my 6-7-year-old self, I was in a different world, if you know what I mean, at that concert.
Yeah. Super freak.
I was like, I was singing Super Freak and not understanding what that meant.
I worked for Capital One out in Kansas City, and they had a suite at the Sprint, now T-Mobile Center, and Chris Brown was the act. And so I happened to get tickets for me and my daughter, and I'm trying to, let's see, she was probably about 13 or 14, but Chris Brown was the act, and he was doing some things to the stage that I'm not sure I was comfortable with my 14-year-old daughter watching, but hey, it's all good. I mean,
He's Chris. It's so funny you should say that. Chris Brown is on tour right now. He's doing something called Breezy Bowl, and it's extremely popular. And he's selling out stadiums, and he's still doing stuff to the stage.
I was like, that's so interesting.
It's so interesting. I didn't know you could do that on stage.
Okay. We're going to take a cigarette break. Anyhow. So I know you were born in the Midwest and raised in the East Coast, but talk about where you were born and what was fun for you growing up, what you loved doing, besides going to Rick James concerts.
Although it was a good concert, I think. I mean, it's memorable. I was born in Saginaw, Michigan, which is, like how Michigan looks like a little hand, and there's it's more towards the thumb area of Michigan, a couple hours outside of Detroit. Back in those days, a lot of people worked for manufacturing car companies. My whole family, both sides, worked for GM or GM affiliates. And so we were just an ordinary middle class family that had left, both sides had left the South. One side came from Alabama, another side came from Texas, where, they left conditions that were not good, very impoverished, especially not good for African Americans back in the 40s and the 50s. And they all migrated north, and they migrated to Michigan, where they had a completely different life, owned a home, had a job, had a skill, and it was just a really nice community at that time. And so that's what I was born into. Yeah. And then my parents were like that next generation where everybody kind of came together as a community and sent these kids to get a better education. And so on my dad's side, he's not the first, but on my mom's side, she was the first to go to college. They went to Michigan State. And surprise, there's a me. There's a me that comes into the fold. And so again, this was a different time. My grandmother was like, bring her to me, I'll take care of her. So at the beginning of my first couple of years on this earth, I thought my grandmother was my mother, actually. Yeah. I thought my mom was my sister, not because they said that, because they told me my mom was my mom. It's not that I didn't know that. It's just that my grandmother seemed to be the authority figure, and my mother did not seem to be the person who knew what she was doing. And then looking back on it, she was 18. Yeah. She probably did know what she was doing. Wow. And my grandmother was 36, which again seemed old at the time, but obviously she was a young grandmother. And so I grew up with just a lot of family. I was the first grandchild. Everybody was just taking care of me. And so I grew up fast, is I guess what I want to say, because I grew up with adults and no kids. Right. Eventually, my parents graduate from Michigan State, which is in Lansing. They come back to Saginaw. And my father wants to be in the managerial program at a GM affiliate at a plant. And he has a college degree. He has all the things you need to do that. And they tell him very blatantly, you could have all the degrees in the world. I don't care if you are a doctorate. Your only place you can work here is on the floor with the rest of your relatives. And I'm saying it the nice way. That's not how they said it. Yeah. So that angered him. And he had always his hero was Thurgood Marshall. I don't know why, but he just always admired Thurgood Marshall. And my mom said he came home pissed and said, what would Thurgood do, I guess. And so he looks to see where Thurgood went to law school, which was a place called Howard University in Washington, D.C. And he just calls them on the phone and says, I want to apply to go to law school, which is so crazy. And that basically happens. So they tell him how to do it and he does it. And then my mom says he calls the admissions office daily did you get my application? Am I going to get in? Did you get my
Right.
application? And she said she literally thinks he got into law school because the people were just like, if we let him in, he'll stop calling us. Like, he'll just leave us
Right.
alone. And so he gets in and we pack up a car. We drive down to Washington, D.C. My parents get lost. They're trying to go to Maryland because they had a friend of a friend. And that's important because at that time, D.C., in terms of just the makeup of it, D.C. was a very prosperous African-American city. And there were parts of Maryland that were as well. The Virginia side was not too diverse. It was not, there's pockets of where African-Americans are, but it's not, it's
Right.
just not that type of city, that type of area. They get stuck in Virginia because they don't know where they are. They wind up staying in a hotel and they wind up befriending somebody at the hotel who's like, just get an apartment over here. And that changes my whole life because now I grew up in Northern Virginia. That is why I grew up in Northern Virginia. That is why I grew up in schools where I'm, one of only a few Black people. And quite frankly, I wind up meeting my future husband in one of those schools.
Oh, wow.
And the rest is history. But it was, thank you for that plant manager for telling my dad he wasn't good enough to be a manager in your plant, because I wind up growing up in Washington, D.C. and around lawyers and doctors and all kinds of things.
So when you were 10 years old, was that an aspiration to be a doctor or a lawyer or an accountant?
No, it wasn't. I wouldn't say it was Shannon. Well, the answer is yes, it was an aspiration, but it was only because I was told it was an aspiration. Because when my parents got to DC, they couldn't afford babysitters. They didn't have family. So especially back then at a school like Howard, they let my dad bring me to classes with him. So I would sit in the hallway. So I would go to law. I went to law school too, is how I used to tell people I'm in law school as well. And they would give me, back then, there was a book called Black's Law Dictionary, which was like a book of all legal terms. And so I would sit in the hallway during his classes and I would have to memorize words like negligence and res ipsa loquitur and stuff like that. And then at the end of the class, they would let me come in and they would give me a nickel if I could do like 10 words, like say the word and say the definition. So that was like
a
my
nickel per
daycare.
definition or a nickel for all 10?
Oh no, a nickel for all 10. All 10, which was a lot of money to me back in 1976. I was like paid. I had like $2 in 2 weeks or something like that. So, but yeah, it was just ingrained. Like, you'll do this because this is what you see. But it's interesting because later in life, I understand why I start doing other things because I actually finally can do them. But at that time, your parents told you what to do and you just did it. You just followed. Yeah.
So you go to University of Virginia. Was accounting your original major, or did you switch like a lot of people do? Or
no, again, Jeff, I'm growing up. I am a rule follower. My parents tell me what to do. My teachers tell me what to do. I'm like straight A's. I'm National Honor Society. I have a teacher in high school we took accounting classes. That was back in the day when you took typewriting, accounting, cooking, all the
home economics.
Home economics. I had to take all those classes, and I just wound up getting I'll call one an early supporter. Quite frankly, I had a teacher who in my accounting profession who she had worked at, I think at the time it was Big 10 accounting firms, maybe 12. I mean, there were, a lot of them back then. This is in the 80s. And she had worked at one, got pregnant, started having her family, still wanted to be in accounting. And so she started teaching that class at her local high school. And I saw a lot in her because she had been this professional businesswoman at this big company, and she showed us pictures. And I actually wanted to emulate that lady. She just seemed so powerful, and I wanted to do good in her class. And she was like, if you major in accounting, you could do this too, and I'll support you. And she had gone to the University of Virginia as well. And so I just wanted to follow her footsteps. She believed in me. I wanted to follow her. I told my dad I still go to law school. So he was like, great, you can major in that, because he was paying for it, had to have his approval. And so when I got to UVA, I was very focused. Like, I have to major in accounting and then I have to go to law school because I have to.
So interesting. So you graduate from UVA Law School and then, what was that first job post education life?
The standard thing that people who go into accounting go into and then get a graduate degree of some sort, even if it's not law, what you're going to do, you're going to go to a professional services firm, whether it's an accounting firm or a law firm. That is what you you do. And that is what I did. And I worked at law firms. I worked at KPMG. I worked at K&L Gates. I worked at Cooley. I did all of the things that were like what the textbook said you were going to do. The textbook's about to like break wide open, but at that point in my life, I'm just following all the plans. And so my father is sitting back saying, yay, I got a winner. And by the way, he didn't just do this for me. He did this for his siblings. He did like whole folks in our community in Saginaw started coming down to DC and sending their kids so my father could help them get into Howard and help them have a life too. And so what I will say about him, as much as it was pretty strict, he really did change. And I've talked to not just my immediate family, like uncles and aunts and stuff like that, but like extended family that I'm still friends with, like neighbors and stuff whose kids, got mentored by my dad. They all thank him because he changed. He was the first one to leave and then go into a profession like law. And a lot of people wind up doing that as well. And so in that way, he was a trailblazer. Like I say, he was strict. There was no tolerance for not following the plan, but it changed a lot of people's lives and generations. So for that, I'm thankful. But yeah, I did all the things that I was supposed to do. And then I married a guy and that changed the plan.
Now, it changed the plan because you moved somewhere where you had to kind of pivot career-wise, or tell us the story.
Both things. I married a submarine officer. My husband went to the Naval Academy, and when he got out, his service was subs. I was a little naive. I didn't understand that meant that it would like have to impact my career. I just thought, he's in the Navy, we'll make it work. And no, it did, because you got to move. And then, when you move, you have to take different bar exams. So that's like not sustainable for a long, career in the Navy, because who's going to take 10 bar exams? Like, I guess people do it, hats off to them, but I wasn't going to be one of those people. And so we had to like figure out a different way how to make the profession and the marriage thing work at the same time. And then we had a kid, and that also, puts a kink in the, in the rope a bit. And so by the time I would say I had been out of law school for about 5 years or so, my husband and I made the decision that he would get out of the Navy. At that point, we had basically been on the East Coast. We're both living in, Washington, D.C. or up north, but just staying there. We moved to California and we both took jobs at a pharmaceutical company called Amgen. And that really changed everything. Like, because not working in professional services, working for a big company, doing something totally different than I had been doing, it like changed my whole life and career, for sure.
Well, yeah, talk about that Amgen experience. You were there about 4 years. Seemed you had some great international experience and responsibility. Yeah. Talk about that.
I mean, at that point in my life, let's just be clear. I had a passport and I had been out of the country, but Jeff, being out of the country was called the Bahamas. Okay.
Cabo.
That was, I hadn't even been to Cabo, like, because we grew up on the East Coast. You went to the Bahamas. Right. The Caribbean is your Hawaii, is your Cabo when you grew up on the East Coast. And I mean, Miami is like, I went somewhere. So I hadn't really, that first kind of job where you're able to fly around for a big company. And then we were expats. They sent us to Switzerland. I had never been to Europe. And again, growing up on the East Coast, you would think, it's like a 6-hour plane ride. You've never flown to London? No, I had never done any of that. I mean, so it was completely, like, it was unbelievable for my whole family, quite frankly. I had a grandmother who had only been on an airplane once in her life, and that was to come to my wedding. And she even said, I asked her before she passed, she lived for a long time until her late 80s. I said, what's the most amazing thing that has happened in your lifetime? You grew up in the 30s or whatever, or the 20s, or you were born then. She didn't say civil rights. I thought she'd say something like that. She didn't say that. You know what she said? That you get on an airplane and you're not scared and you just fly, and you're allowed to do that. Like, you're a regular person and you're allowed to fly. Which was like mind-blowing to me. But I guess in her time, you were either rich or you were in the military if you got on airplanes.
Yeah, I mean, in the early day, I mean, like 60s and probably 70s, like you dressed up when you went on a plane. It was really for the elite, socioeconomically advantaged, that had the wealth to do that. Right. Yeah. And now people are in their pajamas and slippers on the plane.
Oh, gosh. And hair curlers. I've seen the most craziest thing on planes. But for me to move to Switzerland for her was just like mind blowing. And so that's why I say, when I say it changed my world, it changed my whole life, to the point where I mean, just how I thought about the world, having to work in an environment where everybody is from different countries. And, you know, I have kids at this time. And so sending my kid to an international school where there's like 80 countries represented in his, like, you know, in the kindergarten, like across multiple classes, that was game changer. That changed. I never could go back to the Shannon who thought she would live in Washington, D.C. and practice law and maybe vacation, you know, somewhere exotic, like, I don't know, Trinidad and Tobago.
Right.
Like,
yeah, what a great experience for your kids that experience, you know, 80 different countries, and having that kind of diversity and worldview is, phenomenal.
My middle kid was actually born. I had him in Switzerland, and that taught me a lot about our health system versus somebody else's, because I'd had a baby in the United States, and I remember them saying, I had a C-section, saying, okay, looking at their watch, like, you got to get out of here. Like, you can stay here for like a day and a half. It was ridiculous. And, you know, you had a major surgery. And over in Switzerland, I had this baby, and I'm like, okay, when do I have to get out of the hospital? I had the baby on a Tuesday. Do I need to leave on Thursday? They were like, stay as long as you want.
Right.
What? They were like, do you need us to send a nurse home with you so they can help you with like breastfeeding and taking care of the baby? I'm like, how much does that cost? It was all included.
Wow. Yeah. So interesting.
Yeah. So different. So that, coming back to the US, I am forever changed. I am a totally different person. And that, it definitely changes my career journey and personal life journey. And my kids. That same kid that lived in born in Switzerland winds up, as, you know, in his college experience, he winds up living in South Africa for 6 months and swimming with sharks. Like, that's what he did when he was there. He researched sharks and swam with them, not in a cage.
Jeez. There you go. Love it.
Changed life. Yeah.
It's no Rick James concert, but it is. But so you're at Amgen. You're senior counsel. Sounds like a great experience. So what was the kind of the pivot point to move out of that position onto the next one?
Coming back to the United States, like I said, it was just going to be really hard to fit back into like what I would call a regular corporate job, where I had just experienced like a scaling, explosive job where we were literally going from country to country and setting up, you know, operations across Europe. It was just really hard to be like, okay, I was just doing this like fabulous thing, and you want me to come back and do that. And at the same time, in my personal life, our eldest son, who's autistic, those were some critical years for him. And quite frankly, it was hard to find daycare. It's not like it is now, where there's a lot more, I think, people who are aware of autism, people who provide supports, organizations and daycares and providers and therapists. There's just a lot more. But back then, you have to understand, this is like almost 20 years ago, it was not. It was very difficult. And so husband and I looked at each other and we're like, somebody's going to have to like spend some more time on this. And it's going to be hard to do that with a full-time job. So that somebody was me. And I left the big corporate job. And that was probably the first time in my life where I was like, oh my gosh, all the plans my dad had for me, I've now failed.
Are you drowning in boring corporate communications? Palacio and Partners is here to rescue you. We transform internal podcasts from snooze fest to must-listen content that actually connects your team and strengthens your culture. Imagine podcast episodes that make your employees laugh while staying informed. Our founder, Jeff Palacio, doesn't just create podcasts. He creates conversations that break through the noise. Whether you're a growing startup or a massive corporation, we turn your company's story into audio gold. Leadership becomes human. Remote teams feel connected. Your message cuts through the clutter. Palacio and Partners, where corporate communications gets a fun makeover. Let's make your podcast work harder than your email inbox ever could. Jeff is happy to share his insights on podcasting with you. You can contact him via LinkedIn or schedule a Zoom call via the link in the episode description.
Oh my gosh, all the plans my dad had for me, I've now failed. I've now failed because I'm not really doing anything but make sure my son has therapies, which he's 27 now, and that was the best thing I could have done for him because he's independent. He doesn't even live in our house. He lives in a group home. He's got a community. He's got a job. He's like, things are great. But I mean, I think a lot of that had to do with putting in that time when he was little, and with the blessing that we could afford for me to put in that time, as well, just financially to be able to do that is, I don't take that for granted. But yeah, I was without a job because I chose to be without a job, but at the same time, I just felt like failure. A dear friend of mine, Tanya Pereira, I'll shout her out, said to me, enough of this pity party. Enough. Like, I'm done with you in this pity party. Come with me. Like, you need to get out more. Come with me to this reception at my parents' house. You'll meet some people. But you need to move on. Like, this is ridiculous. And so I went with her to the party begrudgingly because she's pretty, persuasive. And it was at that party that I can say that was the pivot moment that changed my life in a way that, I probably wouldn't be talking to you today on this podcast. At that party, I met a gentleman by the name of Norm Nixon, a former Laker, who was like, my wife is looking for somebody to run her organization. And his wife is Debbie Allen from Fame. Yeah. And long story short, she actually winds up hiring me. And here I am now in my mid-30s, running an organization, raising money, hiring and firing people. Everything reports to me. And that was a turning point, because at that point I had been a lawyer and a finance person. I had really been a service provider to big clients. I'd never had to build a business. I had to sell a business. I didn't know anything about any of that type of stuff. But she believed I could do it. That's all that really mattered. And that's what changed everything for me.
Wow. Yeah, I love the, I believe there's no coincidences, so, things that happen, serendipity are just so beautiful. So that's phenomenal. So, look at your career and you've done so many different things, CFO, COO, executive director at the Debbie Allen Dance Academy. But I know you talked about, your dad, obviously a major influence in your life. And I totally get the rule following thing because I'm a rule follower at the end of the day. But, at what point did you kind of get over that? I don't have to take, maybe your dad's influence in the direction you want. And because like I said, like most accountants, and again, a terrible stereotype, like people that are drawn to accounting, are certain type of people good at math and, sometimes not as creative, and you get into this creative side and, become an executive producer of, on board the film. But talk about what was the moment where you're like, I can do my own thing. I can be myself. I can pursue what I want to pursue.
That definitely happened once I got to work with Debbie Allen, because now I'm actually managing a bunch of creatives, right? That's a big part of my job, and figuring out how do you talk to creatives, because you can't talk to them like corporate people, because literally you sound like womp, 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 womp when you talk to them. So you have to talk their language. And so, for example, one of the things Debbie made the whole team do is we had to take an improv class. And I remember thinking, I know why those people need to take an improv class, because they want to be actors and actresses. I don't want to be an actor or an actress. But why do I have to take the improv class? And it was one of the best things earlier on in my career that I could have done, because by the time I do go back to corporate America and I am running finance and operation teams, I'm trying to instill that in them. We are not the, finance and legal, those G&A functions, right, are often seen as the office of no, the office to tell you can't.
And don't forget something. IT.
And in improv and IT, right, it's the office of no. In improv, you learn to say yes and. Right. So even if the answer is kind of no, it's yes and then you creatively try to get to what they're trying to do and help them come up with a way to do it that wasn't necessarily the way that they pitched it. And so I learned a lot of that, though, at that point in working with Debbie. And really, it unlocked the fact that I had a creative side. And I'm going to go back to what I said in my childhood. I always, I think, had a creative side. It just wasn't rewarded in my family. Because I remember wanting to take dance classes. I remember going to, they would have the open house for the ballet classes. And I would go and the teachers would be like, oh, you're really good. And I'd go home and tell my dad. And he's like, I'm not paying for that. what job can you, he's like, you can't get a
Right.
job in ballet. We're not going to pay for that. We're not going to actually encourage you to do any of those things. But I actually wanted to do them as a little kid. I just didn't live in a household that supported that.
Yeah, it's so interesting. After you left Debbie Allen Dance Academy, what do you have a career plan to, like, I'm going to become a CFO or COO or
No. The career plan, I mean, I wound up having another kid. And so now I have 3 sons. I never thought I'd have my 3 sons. Remember that TV show?
Back in the
My
day,
3
yeah.
Sons?
Yeah.
Back in the day. I had 3 sons. And no, I think during those years, honestly, Jeff, it was just like, how do I stay above board and still have like corporate jobs? But I wasn't thinking about, climbing any ladder or anything like that. I just needed to like raise these kids and like go to all the events and have a job that will allow this season of my life where I really had to be more present at home for me to be more present at home. So I did a bunch of things. I consulted. I did, now they call those jobs like fractional CFO, fractional COO. Like I did a bunch of fractional stuff because it worked with my home life. My husband's still, full-time working on his career, climbing the ladder. He's also in finance and eventually becomes a CFO, but he's still working crazy hours and traveling a lot for his job. He did have a corporate job. We're moving we moved to Atlanta for a while for his job. And so, no, I'm just trying to keep it all moving. Right. I'm just trying, like, I didn't have that ambition. The ambition was to just make it to tomorrow. That was the ambition. But then we moved to the Bay Area and that all changes. The kids are older and that all changes for sure.
Here's a Anderson Cooper type question. This might throw you aback, but since you and your husband are both CFO trained and leaders in that area, who does the budget and the finances in your family?
I will say that it's so crazy. It is kind of stereotypical, I will say, of what you would think our gender roles are. It is kind of like that. So but also here's how we were educated, probably, because I did come up as a CPA, pass the exam and all that type of stuff, accounting. My husband is an engineer who goes back to business school, Wharton, and gets an MBA in finance. Okay. So if you think about those two, if you just saw it on paper, like how we came up in finance, you would probably assume the accounting person's all about the budget and paying the bills, and the finance person who's not an accountant is all about, the revenue side and the investments. And it's pretty true to form in terms of how that works in the household. I definitely to be fair, there's some, bills that he pays and we've divided them out in that way. But for the most part, I'm like mostly the bill payer and mostly like moving money and doing all that type of stuff. That's, I know at any time where things are, right? I know the budget pretty well. We did, though, in I'd say the last 6-7 years, did the best thing for our marriage. And that is we hired a professional investment and money manager. That was the best thing because she's kind of like the referee.
Right, there you go. Yeah.
Right.
Well, at least for me, I think, they're focused on it, as part of their job where, you're doing it, not full time. So,
and we both think we know best, right? Because we're like, I'm in finance. I know best. We both think we know best. So.
There's one, you're a CFO of Wing, and they're a drone delivery service. I'm just so fascinated with that company. I didn't research it much, but talk about that experience and what you learned there and the service itself.
Wing is a commercial drone delivery, autonomous drone delivery service. There are several that are out there. This one is the one that's owned by Alphabet, Google. And it's interesting because when you live in the Bay Area, which is where I live, flying drones, self-driving cars, it actually becomes very normalized, if you will. Like my kids are not impressed by that. I know when you live in other places, you're like, wait a minute, there's drones that and this is happening in the United States, go to Walmart and they pick up my, I got a thing of kombucha. Yes, they pick it up. It doesn't spill. Right. In fact, the number one thing when I was CFO at Wing, we had expanded starting in Australia before really expanding in the US. The number one thing people ordered, you want to guess what it is? And then to be clear, the packages that they deliver are like, let's say under 3 pounds. Yeah. The distances are, but you
I'm going to go with toilet paper.
Fast. No, it's coffee.
Like the ground.
You're like, think about it, getting
the
your
ground or actual coffee.
Like your actual Starbucks coffee, your cup of coffee, not spilled in under like, I think don't quote me, but I think the stats were under 10 minutes, but we, our fast deliveries were under 3 minutes.
Wow. Interesting.
Right. Yeah. Well, it's coming. Yeah. That's it's not only is it's coming. It's not like, this is not like the Jetsons anymore. Right. This is really happening and coming to a city near you. Like, there's a whole generation that is growing up on kids that are growing up on drone delivery being like, that's how you get your stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. The pace of change and technology advances is just, it's really incredible. Yeah. So, I mean, you've had so many leadership experiences at, C-level positions. Did you have a leadership mentor, whether that was a person or people or books or a book? What was kind of your guiding principles and things that people or books that affected you most?
Well, certainly had a bunch of mentor supporters. Absolutely, hands down. I call them my personal board of advisors. Different points of my career and different folks, but absolutely, I completely believe nobody makes it to the C-suite alone. Like, it's just not possible. Also was in a several really good networking groups that were really supportive of each other. This is what I tell my kids now that my kids are young adults. I tell them all the time, relationships matter. Really spending the time, and it's not transactional and it's not quick. I remember I met this woman when I first moved to the Bay Area, and it was really lonely. And she said to me, I was trying to decide how to get back into corporate America. And she was like, she herself is an attorney and has been a general counsel, but also a partner in law firms, all these things. And she said to me, go back through the finance ranks. And here's why. She's like, you told me you ultimately want to be on a board. And she's like, boards are always looking for CFOs. I'll never forget that bit of advice. And it's so full circle. And then I also told her I needed to be better networked in the Bay Area. I found it very difficult to get into tech. I found it to be a very insular group. How do you break in? And she gave me the first entree, like vouched for me to get into this group called High Power for Women. And that changed all the relationships that like I started having in the Bay Area. And I actually started liking it here because at first I hated it. But it took somebody to like open the door to pull you up, right? Like she's climbing, she's lifting at the same time. And it's so full circle because next week I'm getting a Lifetime Achievement Awards. Pretty funny to think about that. But from this group called Legal Momentum. And even when they called me to do it, I said, although I still have my my legal license, I am not out there hanging a shingle practicing law. And you're giving me a award for lawyers. And they said, no, that's exactly why we want to give you the award, because you were able to do so much with your legal background. And I was like, huh. But the person giving me the award is this woman, Kathy Vidal, the same woman I am telling you about that opened the door for me, 12 years ago.
Love
Same
that.
woman is now giving me the award.
Yeah, I saw. You're on you're a board member of SoFi and NetScout Systems and Lazy Dog Restaurants. Like, so did you have like you said earlier? You wanted to be on a board. What did you have a strategy, and why did you want to be on a board?
Well, a couple of things. Early in my career, actually, even when I was it actually goes back to when I was even in college, actually. We had a speaker come to the UVA. Her name is Ann Fudge, whom I've subsequently since met now that I've become a board director. And I told her this story about how she inspired me as a 20-year-old. She came and spoke to our school about her job. And at the time, she was one of a handful of African-American women. You got to remember, this is in the early 90s, who was like a CEO or, a COO or whatever of a major corporation. And so Anne was over at I believe Sarah Lee, and she came and spoke to the school. And I just had never seen somebody like her. And she actually spent a bunch of time talking about how she had gotten on a corporate board. And the 20-year-old me didn't even understand what that meant, but I understood it was important. It must be something important if she's spending so much time in this speech talking about it. By the time I start practicing law, I'm working on corporate transactional stuff, IPOs, M&A work, you name it. I then get more exposure to what a board is, because that's, what you do as a lawyer. And so at that point, I knew what it was. Then I go into Amgen and wind up having the opportunity as a young manager to present to our board of directors, which was crazy at that age, that I got to go to a board meeting and present something. So at that point, I absolutely know what it is. And I'm on my vision board when I get to be old. And now, to be clear, old to me is probably 60 or 55. That's probably an old person, right? Maybe 45. I mean, that's old people, right? But I mean, it's on my board to do it. And so by the time I'm coming to the Bay Area and I sit down with Kathy, I'm absolutely clear on what boards do and et cetera. I just don't know the how you get on one, right? I don't know the unlock on the how you get on one. And that's where meeting the Kathys and having those people who are willing to lift you as you climb, and then getting into some of these leadership groups and you're meeting other people, that's when it starts to unclick. I joined an organization called How Women Lead, and they have a board training. So I take it, and that helps me think about how do you put your bio together? Who are the type of people you should meet? And then, it's just a matter of timing and more networking. I eventually meet this woman named Merlene Santil. Merlene forms an organization with Robin Washington. They are both prolific board members, have been on lots of boards, and they decide they want to help other women get on boards. And I got to be on the list of folks they wanted to help. And why that's important is the other thing I didn't realize. I thought you just interview for a board, like a job interview. It's not like that at all. It's not a job, right? You're a strategic advisor. And so they interview you, but they also do what I call the backdoor checks on you. So these are people they're talking to that you didn't tell them to talk to about you. And I think what Merlene and Robin really did, and Merlene really made sure that people were connected, so that she got a backdoor call on me, but she'd known me for a while. So all those things help you when you're trying to get into this kind of Pandora's box of how you even get to be on the short list for somebody they want to talk to about being on a board.
Well, since we're talking about boards, talk about your executive producing experience with your documentary.
So how I had gotten into, by the time I had done that documentary, I had made, I have an IMDb page. I had made a bunch of films. I'd worked on TV projects because I actually had taken a CFO role after Debbie Allen. About 3 years after that, I got my first CFO role at a small company, but it was a production company, Jeff, which made TV content and film content.
Was that
so I really learned.
Sunseeker Media? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sunseeker. Yeah. So I learned how you actually the business of how you make a production and you sell it, and how you fundraise for it, and how you keep the cost in line, and how you hire all the people. Again, hire all the people, and then you fire all the people because the production's only 6 months. And so I'd done a bunch of that. So I'd done that for a company. And then one of the first ones I worked on for myself was a documentary on autism in the Black and Brown community. And we took that film to Cannes, and we won at the American Pavilion. Wow. So out the gate, one of my first project was super successful. And then we sold it to Viacom. And that wound up, so that means it wound up being shown on some of their cable channels. And so just a lot of success out the gate. So I knew how to do these projects, and I still do these projects because now I've gotten a reputation, but it's not my job, right? It's kind of like a passion that I know how to, turn into something that's impactful and can make money. I know how to do it. And so I went to Merlene, who is the, and basically convinced her that she should do a movie about her movement and about all the people she was helping, including me, get on boards. I was like, we should do this movie. And I know that, I knew a award-winning producer. We brought Deborah Riley Draper onto the fold. And basically I knew it was time to make this movie when I was researching the history of women on boards and then Black women on boards. And I got some names. And Jeff, you would look at these articles from like the 70s. It would be in like the Wall Street Journal, and it'd be like former homemaker turned, went back to school to get her doctorate, is now on the board of PG&E. Right. Like it just like the way they described it, it was like not that flattering. But these were the trailblazers that, got on the first boards. And so I found the first Black woman to get on a board, to be specific. And then I was like, this is who we're going to feature in this film. And I happened to mention to a mentor of mine I was doing this film and that we were going to feature this woman. And he was like, why are you featuring that woman? And I'm like, because she's like the first one. And he's like, I was alive then. I myself was, he was a consultant at McKinsey and he was getting on boards. And he's like, she's not the first. And I'm like, look, Google says she's the first. And he's like, Google is wrong. And I went back and fact checked him. He was right. So history just like, but you know how the algorithms work. All it takes is me or you to make up a story and 1,000 people to follow us and 1,000 people to follow them. And it becomes true. And then it becomes on Wikipedia. It's like it's not fact checked by anybody. And so I knew we had to make that film. And so now if you actually Googled it, like who's the first Black woman to get on board, because of our movie, you'll actually get the right lady, the right person, the right trailblazer, the right everything.
Yeah, that's so interesting. Are you doing, what is your main focus now outside of being a board member for various companies?
Well, as you mentioned early on, I have this podcast. It's something I have creatively been wanting to do for a long time. And thank you for your tips. In our pre-call, you gave me a lot of tips and advice because I'm new to this podcast world. I've been on a lot of podcasts, but I did not appreciate how much work goes into actually producing one. I need your listeners to understand it's a lot of work.
Thank goodness Joe Deshawn is my producer, audio video editor. We have a good partnership, and I know you have one too.
I do. Well, that was one of the things you gave me some guidance on, like make sure you have a good team, because this is not going to be just like I just sit and talk to people and then I hit submit and it's a podcast. That's not how it works at all. I've been on a lot of podcasts. There was podcasts I liked. There were podcasts I was on that I didn't like. So I kind of had like how I would do it if I could do it my way. But I needed the time, and I needed like the creative space to do it in a way that didn't represent anybody's brand but Shannon's. And so I earlier this year, as I was, I'm still the planner, when I was thinking about what am I going to, plan for 2025? I was like, you will launch a podcast that year. Like you will make it happen. And so I did. And, in doing my research, there's a lot of leadership podcasts, as you know, you've been doing this for quite a while. There's a lot. And so I thought, how do I distinguish, myself? And this goes back to, told you I can beat Shazam. I love music. And most people I know, even if they don't say they love music, one thing is for sure. If you hear it, songs will take you to a place, regardless of your love for it or not. And so I thought, what about telling their journeys through music and actually giving people their own playlists? It's probably something a lot of leaders have not had happen for them. Let me try it out on a couple people. And so I sent out a request for people to be on podcasts, and I sent it to a wide list of people, thinking if you get 10 to 20% of these people to say yes, score, because you send it to so many people. And I will tell you that they all said yes. And so now I have the problem of, when do I interview these people? When do I slot them? And I've got enough content to have like 2 seasons now.
Right. That's a good problem to have. Yeah.
Right. More people want to be on the podcast because it's a different type of format. They actually get to talk about the music through, their life journey. So people come, you get 5, you go through their journey, 5 parts of their journey, you get 5 songs. And they have a playlist, and there's always something around the songs and the why, and people can identify with the music.
So are they, during those 5 pivotal career moments, are they naming the song at that period of their life?
Yeah. We name the song. Right. Okay. We name the song. We don't play the songs on the episodes, but we do have it on. Yeah. We have a playlist on Spotify.
Yeah. Love that.
I feel like you should be coming on, Jeff. Pressure. Well, I feel like we should do the playlist of your life.
There we go. I'd like that. Yeah, I saw you had various artists, musical artists, and so Steve Garvey. I saw you had former Dodger, LA Dodger, great Hall of Famer, I believe. So that's phenomenal. So congratulations on that.
Like me, like my life, like I just told you, I'm somebody who's lived all over the place. And again, that moving to Switzerland did change how I just thought about like just the leaders I was exposed to. They're from every walk of life. And so in this podcast, it was very important for me to get, different types of what you have to be as a leader. You have to have something that's an inspiring career. Like you have to have that. And you've got to like have music in your life. And for most people who are inspiring leaders, they have that. So some people are corporate. Some people are, like you said, I have Kimmy Lattimore, who's a Grammy-nominated singer. I have an actress. I have sports legends like Steve Garvey. I have tech CEOs. I have Vicky Johnson. I have board directors, Barbara Adachi of, public companies. It spans the gamut of the people that I have on here. But one thing is for sure, they all have like unique playlists. And it's interesting. At the end of the season, we're going to do a compilation of all the songs that were the most popular. And you do see some trends depending on where they are in their journey. You do see a couple artists keep coming up and up and up in people's leadership journeys.
Talk about what was the biggest surprise when you were launching the podcast or creating it? Was it like, oh man, I didn't know this was going to happen. What was that for you?
For some people, I didn't realize the format of picking songs would be so hard. And I think it's because they either overthought it or they just like so much music they couldn't like narrow it down. They just couldn't do it. So that was a little, I thought, oh no, you could just pick 5 songs, like, and just, and like, where you were in 1985 and this pivotal thing happened to you. What were you listening to? And for some people it's like super easy, but that part was a little, and then I guess the other thing is that it's really interesting how people promote, podcasts. There's people who, like, every time I'm on a podcast, I promote it. And I just assumed everybody did that. But it's honestly interesting. Some people are really good at it. And it's some of the people I'm the closest to, like that I literally know on a super personal level that did promote their own episode. Why, Jeff? Why?
I'm with you. I totally get it. I've had people that were phenomenal guests and they didn't promote it. I'm like, well, it's funny. What's next for you? We're recording here September 2025. You got, big plans for end of year and 2026. What's next for Shannon?
It's so funny because I'm meeting with a colleague of mine, and we are actually doing some, because I'm a planner, we're doing some road mapping for a couple things there's a couple conferences we're going to launch in 2026. So we're doing some planning for that now. I am a part of this organization called the AI Council. And so I know that's going to be a bigger part of my leadership. And that council is really doing governance and really helping with AI adoption for directors and C-suite leaders and things of that nature. So they have a big conference later this year. I'll be speaking at that, but also just doing a lot more in getting AI adoption really understood at a very executive level. I'll be doing a lot of that, on my professional side, and expanding the podcast. There's been a lot. Now I'm getting people saying they want me to do a book. Yeah. So I don't know. I'm sure you've gotten those requests, like, Jeff, how can I have a book? So
I've thought about. I'm in 176 episodes in now. So it's there's a lot of similarities, and you talked about improv earlier. You're like the 4th guest that improv really impacted their lives and made them a better leader, and so it's so interesting. Yeah, I love helping 2 groups of people. One's that recent college graduate or even high school graduate that is going to now go through, start their professional career. What advice would you have for them as they begin that first job search and start their career?
I speak a lot, especially at my alma mater, the University of Virginia. And I say this to even my own kid, who is now a 4th year, a senior at UVA at my alma mater. So fingers crossed we can get over the finish line with him. But I say this to him as well. Relationships really matter, that they should really spend a lot of time, not only the relationships they have with people in their inner circle, but really going out of their comfort zone to get these relationships. And so I always say, if they know you or they know me, you should be reaching out to us to say, you know me, Mrs. Nash, can you suggest 5 people that would be good for me to talk to? So it's not transactional. It cannot be transactional. It's about delivering, for them building a relationship. And I tell them that because these are the people where maybe they help you today, maybe they help you 10 years from now, maybe you help them. It doesn't matter. But if you don't start developing these type of relationships, it's going to be really hard for you as you have ambition to grow in your career to do that. It just really is. And so I probably get a bunch of LinkedIn requests, and all the student ones I always accept. And I'm happy to connect. I always say, go through my connections and tell me 5 people you want to meet and give me a blurb about you, and I will make that connection. And maybe not all 5 will respond, but you only need a couple. You only need a couple to respond. That could change your whole trajectory. So that's the advice.
Yeah, I love that advice. I always say that everybody remembers trying to get that first job, and it's a horrifying, terrifying experience. So I think people are very empathetic and want to help a recent college graduate. Right?
That's right.
So I like that. And I think part of it too, that, about relationships is also, there's still the COVID kid era, that and plus technology, because you can hide behind a technology, via text or social media comments or whatever, where you don't have to face anyone. So kind of that face-to-face relationship part, I think sometimes gets lost. So yeah, I love that. That second group of people I love helping, Shannon, is that everybody basically starts their job as an individual contributor, and anyone can be a leader, but those that want to take that step where you're in charge of a group of people and you become a first-time manager, what advice would you have for them?
So I'm going to give you something a little outside the box. Remember, my podcast is called No Boxes. So I'm going to give a different type of
I hope
answer.
you tie it to a song too, just to really tie it together.
Yeah, I'm going to tie it. There you go. I hadn't thought about it, but now I am. I'm going to say that I think that you can get a lot of these managerial and leadership skills outside of your company and your job. You should do the formal stuff. Do not get me wrong. But I do think there's a lot to be said in getting those skills in things like working with a nonprofit. Nonprofits want you. Whether you get on their board or you volunteer with them to help them with a project, they will take you and be ecstatic to help you learn some leadership lessons. So I remember very early on in my career volunteering with a nonprofit, and they put me on a committee for a program that they were doing. And then they put me on a committee for a fundraiser, and I'm like leading that committee. I learned invaluable skills doing that. So that's one way to get it. All the way to, we talked about me being a group fitness instructor. So I have licenses for Zumba and UJam Fitness. I will tell you right now, nothing to this day I feel like is as challenging in leading a group of people where you have all kinds of levels of, proficiency in exercise and dance. You got the people, I always say, you got the people in the front line who are like your type A personalities. They think they can do the routine better than you, the instructor, right? They really do. And they they push you out the way. So you got those people in the front row. You got the people in the middle row who are kind of unsure of themselves. They think like some of them are as good as the people in the front row, but they don't really want to be in the front, right? They don't want the attention. And they're working on themselves. Like they lack a little bit of confidence. And then you have the people in the back who have no confidence. They are like, they think they look crazy. They think like, people are going to laugh at them, but they really want to get their steps in. And so what you have to do as an instructor, this is one of the techniques they teach you. You have to switch the lines. You have to switch the lines so that you do 2 or 3 routines and you tell the people in the front to go to the back and on. And then as the people keep coming up, that last row that eventually comes to you, you stand next to them and you like hype them up and you tell them that they're good and you give them that confidence. You learn so much about leadership that actually translates into like a job from doing that. I mean, I got to tell you, it's a challenge every time that I love. I learn something new about it all the time. Yeah,
I've asked over 150 guests that question, and your advice to volunteer at a not-for-profit, either as a board member or just volunteer for activities or social, as well as be a Zumba instructors, very unique. So thank you for that unique perspective, Shannon. Any song come to mind that ties into that?
The only song I thought of, and I hope that was a compliment.
Oh yes, 100%, 100%. Yes, absolutely a compliment.
The only song that came to my mind, I don't know why this song came to my mind, but it's that song, Ain't Nothing Gonna Break My Stride. Ain't nothing gonna break my stride. Hold me down. Oh no, I got to keep on moving. That
Love
song.
it. Yeah. I got 3 of the words of the lyrics right. You had every one of them right, of course. Shannon, thank you so much.
But you knew the song.
Yeah, yes, I
knew
did.
the song.
Yes, I did.
Right?
Yeah. Shannon, thank you so much for coming on the Corporate Couch. You're a true Renaissance woman. I really appreciate it, and I'm honored that you came on.
Thank you for having me.
Shannon, talk about Renaissance woman.
Man.
Oh my God, so good, so good. I mean, podcast host, executive producer of award-winning documentary, has her own IMDb page. Can beat Shazam in naming songs. I mean, that's phenomenal. And got her to reveal her first concert was when she was 6 or 7 years old. She went to Rick James, super freak.
Yeah.
You very big Rick James fan, Joe. And there's strange smells in the air during the concert.
What is that strange smell? Mom?
Yeah, and then her dad went to law school at Howard, and she went to law school with him. Like she would study the law dictionary.
Yeah.
While he was in class, and if she could learn some terms, she would get a nickel for every term she would
learn all about habeas corpus and corpus delicti and all that good stuff.
Yeah, and like most guests, the career serendipity. I mean, she quits her job to take care of one of her children, I believe her son, who had autism. And she was kind of a little down, and her friend takes her to this party in L.A. They meet. She meets Norm Nixon, the former Los Angeles Laker NBA star. I believe is still married to Debbie Allen, the famous creator. They based the movie of Fame, I think, on Debbie Allen. And she had Debbie Allen Dance Academy. She becomes the executive director, where Debbie had all her actors and dancers take improv classes, and I guess Shannon did. And that kind of expanded her, not only being an executive director of this dance academy. It was her first kind of non-finance CFO position, and it broadened her, because all improv is, I accept what you say, yes, and I add to it. And, what she says, and I've experienced this in our corporate experience, finance, IT, legal, they're usually the office of no.
That's all they do. They say no, now change my mind.
Yeah. They're no and.
Yeah.
Not yes and. So it brought a new perspective. Like, how can I add value and create a culture, a finance culture that is adding value and not just saying no to things that maybe can enhance the business and do great things. So it was just phenomenal. And then she started a podcast this year in 2025. I mean, which has a musical theme, the five songs that define your career, during your career journey. So I really love talking.
It's kind of
to her.
unique stuff, and she's a fan of the Corporate Couch. So she listened to several episodes of the Corporate Couch. Yeah. She said, "Well, I knew you were going to ask that because I listened to the episodes."
Right? How unique!
What a concept! Listen to the Corporate Couch. Yeah. That was pretty cool. Renaissance, Baroque, classical, cotton gin, Gutenberg Bible. I mean, everything that you could say about her is amazing. She probably has the widest variety of talents and experiences of just about any person that we've ever had on the Corporate Couch. We have some people that early in their career, they land on a thing X, and they just ride it through their entire career. So we've seen a few people like that. And we've seen some people that zigzag back and forth getting into their final career. I don't even know what her, how you would define her, because it is all over the place, and everything she touches turns into gold. Yeah. And I think that's amazing. I think one of the best stories that she had out of the whole time was when she was talking about her dad was a fan of Thurgood Marshall, and so he wanted to go to Howard University like Thurgood Marshall did. Okay. So he packs up their family and they drive to Washington, D.C., but they get lost in North Virginia. And so he has some friends there. And of course, Howard is on the other side of the Potomac. But he says, just stay here. And so even though her dad ultimately went on to Howard, she grew up in North Virginia. And she ended up going to UVA in Virginia. And it's just always interesting to me to see these little pivotal things. You can call them serendipitous or whatever, but these pivotal events that'll happen in your life, like my dad got lost. And,
right.
And we had to stay somewhere overnight. And so we ended up in North Virginia. I can point to probably a dozen different times in my life where this thing happened. There was a flat tire, you were late for a meeting, you missed an email, or that somebody said something and they just casually throw out a random comment, and it meant something so significant to me that it literally changed my life, or changed the direction that my life was going. I can name several of those occasions. And I think it's interesting when one of those things pops out in the corporate couch conversations that we have. It was an amazing interview. I just absolutely loved listening to it.
Yeah, no, she's fantastic. Joe, I know you always are trying to learn new things and improve yourself. What's going on?
You know what I learned? You know who Laurel and Hardy were, right?
Yeah.
Great fans.
Stan Laurel and
Oliver Hardy. Well, now, in spite of the chemistry that they had on film, they actually were not real close to each other in their private lives. And as a matter of fact, I discovered that Stan Laurel did not attend Oliver Hardy's funeral. Did you know that?
I think I did know that.
Did you know that? Okay. What I haven't found out yet is whether or not Oliver Hardy attended Stan Laurel's funeral.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of The Corporate Couch. If you enjoy the podcast, I would love for you to take 2 minutes out of your day to rate us 5 stars and write a review. Please join me next week to learn from another great leader sharing their professional journey and insights.